Welcome back to the IE427 garage, everybody. Today we are taking the final steps in order to get our 25th anniversary Mk4 Roadster completed so we can get this thing back to the owner. Okay, I wanted to start this video with a tip for all of you out there building your Mk4s. There is a little cover plate that covers up the passenger side strap of the Mk4 gas tank. And if you put that in and then carpet over it, and you ever have to take the gas tank out, you're going to have to pull your carpet up in order to get the gas tank strap out. So here's what I do, and I just started doing this. I take that piece, and rather than installing it inside the trunk on the top side, I install it to the bottom. So the carpet is all done in the trunk. And then I take some short black pop rivets. These are 1/8 inch pop rivets. And I drill those in from the bottom, trying carefully not to go through the carpet. And then I pop rivet that piece in. This way, if you ever have to take the gas tank out, you can drill out the 4 rivets here, drop that piece down, go on the top, push the bolt out, and the strap comes completely out. Now there's another way to get the gas tank out. You can just pull the frontmost straps loose and then try to wiggle that gas tank out of there. But being able to get both sides of the strap out and the strap out of your way makes it a lot easier to get the gas tank out. So that's the way I'm doing it from now on. This is the first car I'm doing it this way, and the reason is because I forgot to put that piece in later. And after thinking about it and thinking, well, I'll just leave it out, I thought, you know what, I can put it on the bottom. It'll still give support for that carpeting in that area so nothing can fall through. And it'll be easy to get out later if someone has to take the gas tank straps out of there. So that's the tip for today. Let me lower the car down and I'll show you some of the other stuff we're working on. All right, I've lowered the car down just a little bit. And if you can see right here, I put the clamps on the end of the rack boots, and I loosen those when I turn the outer tie rods to adjust, or actually the inner tie rods to adjust the toe end of the vehicle. So now that that's all done, I went ahead and I put the straps on both sides, so those are all finished up. Okay, here's some of the things that I finished up on the inside of the car. I got the center cap in, and what you want to do when you put the center cap in, start with the polished aluminum center cap itself and put a little bit of petroleum jelly on the O-ring that is on the inside portion of it. That will allow this to pop in there nice and smooth. There is already a hole in the center of the aluminum cap that will allow air to escape. Some of the older ones, they didn't have that, and what would happen is if it was so airtight, you couldn't push this in. The air would keep popping it off. So what you want to do is push this in without your center cap or your center sticker in. And that will allow the aluminum center to go in there and seat, and you'll have less problems and less difficulties pushing it in. After you've done that, then go ahead and peel the backing off of your sticker or your center cap like we have here for the 25th anniversary car, and then carefully affix it so it lines up on your steering wheel. Over here we've got our switches all tight. I'm going to pull that out of there. So our ignition switch is all tight. Same thing with our heater switch and our wiper switch. I just had them in here before hand tight, and so I went back and I went ahead and tightened those all up. The other thing we did is we raised our dash. So the dash was running the way we would normally do it with the aluminum dash that's covered with the vinyl. What we found is that in the center, right where that center screw is, you could see a gap in there. Now I left provisions in there so that I could raise it up later because this is the first carbon fiber dash I've done. But we did have the same problems with the padded dash in the last Texas car we did, and we kind of did the same thing. We had to move the dash up afterwards. So what you're going to have to do if you want to move this up afterwards, because the steering wheel does have to move up with the dash if you've made your hole just the size of the actual steering bezel. In this case, we're using Russ Thompson's turn signal switch. So what we did is we went ahead and underneath Russ's mechanism, we just added a couple of spacer washers to move this up. So it only took about a 1/4 inch of spacer washers here to get us a 1/2 inch of raise in the center of the dash. So that's all done. You can see over on that side, the door panel is in on that side. So we got that all squared away. We did screw these in because they did not come with any other way to affix them. It's basically a aluminum panel that Factory 5 had upholstered. And I got mixed feelings on that. Although the aluminum is probably going to last longer, especially if it's in a damp condition. The problem with it is that there's no way to put staples. So you're relying strictly on glue in order to keep the fabric wrapped around there. And there are some places that I had to re-glue the leather onto the aluminum because these have been sitting for almost 2 years. And they may have been in less than ideal conditions where they were before we got the car. But here, you know, they were subject to heat, they were subject to cold and everything else that's happened during the last, 10 or 11 months that we've had the car. And so there were portions of it that were coming off. So I peeled them back a little more, put some more glue on, and now they're nice and affixed to the panels. But again, that meant that we had to use screws in each of the 4 corners to get them attached to the doors, which is no big deal. I mean, they really look nice. And the Velcro has its issues too. And in the heat, in the hotter months of the year, you'll be driving and the door panel will just come off because it's not the Velcro that lets go. It's the adhesive that holds the Velcro onto the door. So, everything's kind of a trade-off. So those are all done and finished up. What I'm working on now is getting the wipers installed. And as I said, I was going to leave this till last, and I have. It's the absolute least favorite thing on anything I do on any of these cars. Even beyond those seat bases that I had to put in this one. So I'm kind of doing a little step each night to spread out the the misery. But I found that by doing it that way, spreading it out, I just set small attainable goals each night, and it doesn't seem so overwhelming. Not that it's a big job or overwhelming job. It's just it's tedious and meticulous, and you have to cut the tubing, and if you cut it just a little bit short, you got to start over. So I'm working on that. As soon as I have it a little bit farther along, I'll bring you back, and I'll catch you up on what's going on with that. All right, I got tired. I got the wheel boxes in last night, and I was done. So I didn't pick up the camera. So I'll show you what the wheel boxes look like and what you're going to have to go through to put them in. But I got a little farther today, so I'll catch you up on that too. So these are the wheel boxes. So these go in with a number of pieces. So in the bottom of them, and I'll pull one out here in a minute because I've got to thread the cable in. I've pre-fit everything, and so I've got to grease the cable before I do final assembly. But there is a rubber bushing on the underside of the body here. Then there's a gasket. Then there's this trim piece, and then the nut. And then, of course, this part is the part that grabs onto the cable as the cable moves back and forth inside the tubing. Don't be surprised if you have to cut the rubber bushing that's under here. And all the rubber bushing really is a piece of, I think it's 5/8 heater hose. So when these kits are produced, that piece of hose is cut at an angle. I think it's like a 45 or 50 degree angle, and that's what gives the wipers that pitch in order to somewhat match the angle of the windshield. So let me pull one of those out, and I'll show you all the pieces and how it all goes together. Okay, before I go over there and show you the wheel box and how it assembles, I wanted to come back to the holes that we made in the body. Now, it's very important that when you're drilling these holes, we didn't actually drill them. What we did is we Well, we did. We drilled them, but we drilled them straight down. But we marked them with the jig that Factory 5 gives you. And there is a difference in the amount the jig comes back on the body between the Mark 1 through the Mark 3s and the Mark 4, because the Mark 4, this area here is less than it is on a Mark 4. So the placement of these is critical. So Jeff did a really good job cutting these out, but they were a little small. And he did that on purpose because you really want to fit these so that they're snug, but they're not tight. And so I got in there with a round file and carefully just filed it out until the wheel box stem fit through there really nice. Now, over here, where'd I put it? Oh, right here. The wheel box itself, I don't have it put together quite like it needs to go. The wheel box itself, though, has this piece of rubber hose. And like I said, I believe it's 5/8 hose. You can see it's cut on an angle, right? So I think that's about 45 degrees. It was long. Both of these were long. And so what I used to cut these, and you can see it's not a perfect cut, but it's close enough. You can actually just take these and you can run them on a belt sander. Either way, this angle, or you can do them straight up and down. It don't matter. Or you can do what I did. I took a pair of, I guess we call them kitchen shears. But I buy these at the home center. And I love having a couple of different pairs of them around the shop. So these things are really good at trimming rubber hoses. So like when I have a radiator hose that's just a little bit long, I just kind of go around the whole circumference of the hose to trim it back an 1/8 or a 1/2 inch or whatever I need to do. I did the same thing on these little pieces, these little bushings, because when I put these in through the bottom, there wasn't enough gap between the bushing, the rubber washer, the collar, and the nut that I could start threading it on. So I took maybe, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch off of this end. And again, I just kind of went around with the shears, and you can see it's not perfect, but it's flat enough. And so then I put it on and I put it in the car again just to check. So the order in which it goes like this, then it'll go up through the body, and this portion here where the cable goes through is going to face the front of the car. So it's going to sit in there like this. And then once it's through the body, you'll put the washer on, you'll put the collar on, and then the nut goes on. So you can see, you know, the body is about 1/4 inch thick in that spot. Let's see what we got here. And we've got just about 1/4 of an inch of thread right there showing in between the top of the collar and the bottom of the nut. And as you tighten it down, and you're going to tighten it down until it's, again, snug, not tight. You don't want the wheel box to move easily, but you don't want it on there so tight that you're going to start to compress the clear coat of the paint, because if it's under tension with that gasket on it, over time it's going to start damaging the clear coat on the paint. So like I said, snug but not tight. As long as the wheel box doesn't move, you're good, because what's going to hold them in place so they don't twist is the cable that runs in between this one and the one that runs in between the other one. And then from there, back over to the motor that's over in the corner. So they're not going to twist. And once you have them in and they're snug, they're going to be fine. Now, when you go to put them together, when you go to put the cable in anyway, what you're going to do, like I said, this is going to be, if this was the passenger side and the motor's over here, you're going to actually put the tubing on with this loose underneath the body of the car, and then you're going to have to feed the cable in through the wheel box, through the gear, because it won't fit in through here. So it has to come in this way. Once you get that, then the tubing, well, you can actually get the next piece of tubing to come in from this side at an angle and go up. It's the cable that's the problem. And then you have to do the same thing on the driver's one. So if this one's over on the driver's one, you'll have to have the cable and the tubing coming from this side. This will have to be down below the body. You'll have to hook it in and into the gear, threading the cable through, and then place it in the car. And then your last piece of tubing is going to be about, I think it says 4 inches in the manual. But what I did is I cut a piece that was 6 inches long. So this is my last piece. Okay? And then out of that wheel box, you need that cable to protrude a minimum of 1/2 of an inch out of this side. Because the cable actually pushes from park, it pushes away this way to sweep the wipers because the gear is actually reversed inside of here. So I left myself 6 inches for that cable to push into that last piece of tubing. And then what I'll do, I don't think they provide it anymore because I've got all the parts out here. They used to provide a black vacuum cap for the end of that last tube, and I suggest you do that. Find a vacuum cap that's that diameter and put it on the end. What that does is you're supposed to grease the cable. And so when you grease that cable in hot weather, that grease is going to want to turn to a liquid, and it's going to want to drip out the end of that tubing. Now, it's usually not so liquid that it will squeeze out in between this as it's put together. So this goes together like this. Once you're all done, you put that in with 2 screws. It's generally not so liquid that it comes out in between here. But with an open tube on the end, it might just come right out the end. So I've always put a vacuum cap on it. I just figure it's better to do it with the vacuum cap than to take chances. Because again, these aren't my cars. I'm trying to, make these as foolproof for the owner, that they're not going to have to go in and adjust things and fuss with things as they have years of enjoyment out of the car. So anyways, that's where I'm at tonight. And so tomorrow, I'm going to take everything apart. I'm going to grease the cable in sections, and I'm going to make sure you have like those blue nitrile gloves. You can put a little bit of that axle grease in your hands and wipe that grease on the cable. Take your glove off, assemble the tube on the cable, and then so on down the line, because you have to do it in segments so it'll all go together. So I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow night. I'm hoping by the following night I'll have the wipers operational and that I can show you a cool little trick so that you'll protect your paint if one of the wheel boxes was to skip a gear and throw the wiper arm in a tailspin. And I do this just for testing. After that, you're on your own. I don't like using these wipers because they've just been known to skip a gear and then slap that wiper across the front of the hood and take out the paint. So anyways, catch up with you guys tomorrow. All right, it is tomorrow, everybody. I've got the wipers all put together. So I had them all test fit, minus the wiper blades and arms. And now I've got it to the point where I can test the unit. Now I did have a problem. The park position of our wiper motor that was supplied with the 25th anniversary kit was 180 degrees out. Now normally you could just turn the wheel boxes the other side up. You'd have to probably adjust some of the tubing, but for us it wasn't an option. We've got the firewall forward, and I cannot flip the wheel boxes the other way with the tubing facing up because it runs right into the firewall forward. So I had no choice but to open up the actual wiper motor and swap the gear with the stop for the park feature 180 degrees. And what I did first is I thought, well, you know what? I've got another wiper motor upstairs that hasn't been used. I'll check that one to see if maybe it is in the right position. I'll just swap them out. As luck would have it, the one upstairs for the Texas car is exactly the same. So what you need when you put these wipers in, you need for that first stroke of the wiper to pull, not push. If it's pushing, it's going to actually take the wipers that are already parked in this position and it's going to want to flap them down into the paint. No good. No bueno. And you can't have the wipers parked in an upright position. One, it looks stupid. And two, I think some of the law enforcement personnel will pull you over for something like that. So we took the motor apart for both of them, reclocked the gear, and I think I have it right. I've got everything lubed, everything's been greased. I took some blue nitrile gloves and I smeared grease on my hands. That grease right there. And I just took it and I ran it across the cable, and then I started feeding the tubing onto the cable. And so you can see I've got both of the wheel boxes in place and ready to go. They're tight, so they're not moving anywhere. And now if I turn the ignition switch on, which I've already got on, and I go ahead and I turn the switch on, you'll see that it's going to actually go counterclockwise. In this case, we're looking at them, it's going to be clockwise, and then it's going to bring them back down. So everything appears to be working properly, and we'll turn them off. That's parked. We'll turn them on. That's parked again. So if you stop at mid-stroke, it'll come all the way back to park, which is exactly what we want. So rather than testing them like Factory 5 tells you to test them with water, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab a couple of old socks. I'm going to thread them over the top of the wiper blades. I'm going to put them against the windshield, and we're going to see if we can get these wipers to work. Alright, everybody. You're going to see that this is a personal preference. This is not specifically laid out in the Factory 5 instructions, but I like to give the wipers a little bit more room at the bottom when I put them on, just so that in case, just what if. And what that does is it gives the wipers a little bit more sweep, especially for the driver. So you're going to see that when I do the wipers, when I turn them on, they're going to sweep all the way to about here. And the driver needs to see out of this area here. If you clock them too far down against the actual windshield down here, they'll park down there, but what happens is they'll only come to about right here when they're clearing the windshield. And so when we park these, it'll end up a little high, but it's one of those things where all you have to do is, as you exit the vehicle, you just push the wipers down a little bit because there's enough slop built into this cable actuated wiper system that the wipers will fall right down where you want them. So when you're not using them, they're down near the edge of the windshield rather than up, but yet you'll get full sweep out of them when they're in operation. So I've already got the ignition switch on. We can go ahead, we can turn the wipers on right here, and you can see how far the wipers sweep this way. And everything's working. We don't hear any clicking or anything. And so the wipers are actually working right the way they're supposed to right now. Now, as I turn off the switch, you'll see they don't park all the way at the bottom. They park a little high. See where they are on the windshield? But all you do is you exit the vehicle, is you just push them down, and they're done. So now they're out of the way, and they're not going to hit the paint as they park. And you still get full sweep out of the wipers so you can actually see out of the window. So with that, we're about done. I figured I'd show you the trick I use with the socks just to test the windshield wipers. It puts less strain on everything as you're putting it together. So just in case you haven't tightened a screw or something like that, if the gear were to strip and that wiper were to come loose, well, not the wiper, the wheel box come loose and skip a gear and come down. Now, every time it comes back, it's going to want to contact the body, and it's going to start tearing the body apart, and your brand new paint is going to be ruined. So with the socks on there, there's less of a chance of screwing any of the paint up. So, as always, if you're enjoying the content here, please do the like, the share, the subscribe. If you have questions or comments, put them down in the comments. We'll do our best to answer those questions and comments. We'll see you guys all next time. Have a great day.